Kia ora, no mai haere mai, and welcome along to Online Church. This week we're doing something a little bit different to commemorate Te Tiriti o Waitangi, as it is Waitangi weekend. I hope you guys have had a blessed weekend. But coming up we have some interviews with different people sharing their opinions on Te Tiriti o Waitangi, what it means to them, and what it might look like if we lived in a nation where the treaty was honoured to the full extent. So I hope you guys enjoy hearing from different people within our church. Be blessed.
Te Tiriti means to me, it's a covenant between two peoples. It's the only way that I have any right to be here in Aotearoa. It's something that needs to be honoured. It looks like partnership, it looks like protection, it looks like Aotearoa, New Zealand. It looks Māori, Aotearoa looks Māori. Fair representation in every sector. What do I think God thinks about Te Tiriti or Waitangi? Well, I think he thinks it's a covenant that needs to be honoured. What do I think about the current outworking of Te Tiriti o Waitangi? It's probably not that flash. I don't think he's too happy. But the good thing is, we can change it. What Māori, what the tangata whenua here we're good at is whānau, great at whānau, great at relationships, great at gardening. So it's like everything would look different. Our cities would be in different places that be built around whānau, that be built around relationship both between peoples and give the land back. It's fundamental to Māori's identity, the health of a people, the identity of a people, the land and the resources. And Māori are generous people too. So it's not like they're going to say, we're Māori, everything for us. No, I don't hold spaces that I mean for Māori. I don't try and assert my dominance or my knowledge or anything over Māori. Learn and be humble in the learning. It's not really about me at the end of the day, it's about making sure that stuff that God values survives. That it's seen, that it's heard, that these people aren't forgotten. Kua ngaro ngā tangata, toi tū te whenua. So it's like, even though man disappears, the land remains. I think it's interesting both in terms of, I guess, the world, man does die and the land stays here, but also in Te Tiriti o Waitangi, if you look at something like that as being the land, that although our tupuna, our predecessors, although they pass away, this document is still here. And it's something that we need to work with, to be central to whatever we're working with.
There are two actual versions. One is called the Treaty of Waitangi and the other Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And so Te Tiriti is legally recognised as the founding document, the most important document of the two, mostly because the language that was spoken in our country at that point was Te Reo Māori. And so it was the document that was most signed. It was also the document that was written in the language of this nation. So our nation here in Aotearoa was predominantly Māori at that point. So we had some European people come over. We had trade with Australia and other nations in the Pacific at that point. So Māori were already travelling, trading, learning and interpreting relationships with people outside of our immediate country. And so when the treaty came along, it did so in the hands of people that were trusted by Māori. So the missionaries made up the giving hand of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So three main people groups made up the partnerships that happened in forming the covenant, which we know as Te Tiriti. And so this covenant was formed between Māori and the Crown, but through the medium of missionaries. And so missionaries had come to Aotearoa and they had formed tight bonds with Māori, so much so that they were able to interpret for Māori. And they were the ones who wrote Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which causes some issues, but also causes some awesome things. And so when we look at the making of the treaty, we realize that actually the treaty is more than just like a random signatures on a piece of paper. These people did it with the idea that this would be a covenant. And when we see in the Bible what covenants look like, a modern covenant that we understand and know today is the covenant of marriage. And so in marriage, we get that there should be an equal partnership. There should be an understanding of reciprocalness in marriage. I'm married to a Pākehā, so we exist in a treaty marriage, which is pretty awesome. But it doesn't look like one of us having more say than the other. It doesn't look like one of us lording power or making someone do what they want them to. It actually is a beautiful negotiation between two partners, two people who carry with them heritage and understanding and knowledge and skills, and together we're able to make something beautiful and form something new. And so recently we had a son, or 2.5 years ago, we had a son, and his name is Maungarongo. And so Maungarongo is actually the word for peace. And so it's a concept of peace. So Māori understand that there are many pieces, ultimately. That peace is not just like a kumbaya, a silence, but the peace that we really felt that connected with us during the birth of our son was this maungarongo. And so maungarongo is a reconciling peace. So it's a peace that reconciles people and that allows them to walk a path together. And this is our heart and dream. This is my heart and dream for our understanding of Te Tiriti here in Aotearoa in 2021. Is that it would be a document that would help us learn what it looks like to walk in step with one another in maungarongo and peace. A peace that reconciles, that doesn't settle for weak kind of assurances or random negotiations or settlements, but actually restores one another to a place where both parties are in fullness, that all parties that entered into this are able to flourish. I really believe that here in Aotearoa, Māori have a blessing for Pākehā, that we carry within us a love and a goodness that Pākehā will benefit from. And I believe that Pākehā actually carries something beautiful for Māori. But that if we would put down a lot of these things that divide us, and that we would see us walk alongside one another in the covenantal relationship that I feel like God has called us to. When I think about what that looks like, there is the Māori word for weaving is rāranga, and then the Māori word for a leader is a rangatira. And so when we see that rāranga, the ranga part of it, forms the basis of the beginning of that kupu, that word rangatira, and tira is in reference to people. So we see leadership as a place that would weave people. And when you see in weaving, no individual strand is actually destroyed. You don't just forget about it. Each holds integrity of what they are, so that Māori would be Māori and that Pākehā would flourish in being Pākehā, but that neither would replace one to another, but that we would see Māori grow and do incredible things here in Aotearoa. And so that is my heart for 2021, to see the treaty. That is what I understand of the treaty. I'm excited to learn and continue to learn more. There are incredible people like Ani Makaire and Rangi Nui Walker and Moana Jackson, a whole bunch of amazing people, academics, who know amazing things about the treaty. And I feel like, let's be people who are unafraid to hear the truth, to hear when people are hurting, to hear when people are in pain, and listen to their heart, so that we would see more people formed into the truth of who they are. So the word Māori itself, it's normal. So we refer to fresh water as wai Māori. So it's like a freshness, a good thing. And so I really feel like if for Māori to be Māori is key, but for Pākehā to be Māori, to be fresh, to be new, to be authentically Pākehā is also something that we can see happen when the treaty is truly honoured. And so I believe we should listen to Māori, we should hear the Māori perspective, and I think you'll be really surprised by what you might hear, because God is speaking and God is doing amazing things amongst Māori here in Aotearoa.
I think when I was 6, actually, I got invited to a birthday party And I said to my friend, because she said, it's on Waitangi Day, which is the first time that I'd ever heard about Waitangi. So I naturally said to her, what does Waitangi mean? And she just said, my birthday. And then I went home and Dad explained it. In his island way though. So it wasn't the full extent of the treaty. And it wasn't until I actually became an adult and I worked for a government department in Wellington that we got training in the treaty, and that's when I found out so much more about the treaty. What does it mean to me now as an adult? It means, fingers crossed, it means honouring tangata whenua. It means honouring them as a people, honouring culture, and honouring them as the people that own this land. And that's a huge question. I would say that it would look like respect, complete respect across the country in all walks of life, and not just for when we feel like it, or not just on a Saturday that Waitangi falls on. And not just about a holiday. When I saw the treaty itself and displayed in a museum, a little bit of what it might look like. Some of the iwi leaders just scribbled. That was their signature. And I think for me, as an islander growing up here in New Zealand, I'm just grateful though that my kids know more about the Treaty of Waitangi than I ever did at their age. I didn't learn it at primary, I didn't learn it at intermediate, I never learned it even at high school, and I did Māori as a language. I so relate to so many of the stuff that goes on because my mum, she's in her 80s, she's probably hitting her 90s anytime she lies about her age. But she was around when ships came into the harbour in the islands. And some of the songs that her dad would teach her and then she'd try and teach us, we sing about it, the different types of stuff. Some of the lyrics are "Don't go near the boat." You might not come back. And so, just little things like that kind of comes up every now and then when you hear about the songs. Obviously, I can't do anything about it now, but there's still a bit of you. There's still a bit in there that, triggers off things, and I think it actually should relate to everyone. I think even as a Pacific Islander, living in the South Island, grew up here, was born here practically, there wasn't really much awareness, wasn't any discussions, or didn't learn much. And I did sort of grow up in the time where the Māori language actually was sprouting, but only to an extent. Calm down, everyone, And so, and it was sad, but I'm more grateful now that it's out there more, that it's out there. When I think about whakawhanaungatanga, that's the island, island mentality as well. We do everything together, we live together, we eat together. 14 people in a house, that's fine to us. We can do that. We fight together, but we heal together as well. Same. Right throughout the country, when you're the minority, it's hard. triggers a lot of things that I couldn't put to words as a kid. But now, obviously, I can articulate things a little bit more. And then to have to talk to the kids about why people would treat somebody different. It's hard sometimes with the kids to try and put things into words.
Like many people, I'm on a voyage of discovery for this. This is quite important, quite pivotal really for me as a person to really understand. There's a saying, seek first to understand. And so I'm in the process of finding out about it. And it's really quite a delightful journey, actually. Sure, there's been and still is a degree of pain and sorrow and anger and so forth. But there's also, seems to me, great opportunity for rejoicing as well. But the idea, though, of two people groups, if you like, working in partnership is a fantastic idea. I don't think personally that the partnership thing has actually been realised in any sense of what was intended yet. So that means then that to a certain extent we have to disconnect ourselves from some of the fixed ideas that we might have had, maybe through impressions on watching stuff on TV or racism or biases of what kind of thing, and re-engaging with the whole idea of reimagining it. And like it or not, the fact is that the treaty is our foundational constitutional document. I think it's a duty of every Kiwi person or every person who lives here who wants to be part of Aotearoa to know about our history and its truth. There are some very, very sad and bad things in our history, and we can't shy away from that. And we have to acknowledge that and grieve over it, lament over it. But then we also have to then, whether that's an ongoing process, probably is actually, because some of those things can't ever be undone. Nevertheless, we still have a lot of work to do, obviously, for our nation to work together. As a part of Tangata Tiriti, people of the treaty, I'm not tangata whenua, I have no Māori blood whatsoever. I can never be that. And that's okay. I'm a Pākehā, but I have to be comfortable in my own skin, living in this country, being part of something which is not an apartheid system in any way, but is truly bicultural in an honourable, joyous way. What happens if you bring Jesus Christ as an incarnational person who he is within a culture without actually dictating what you're supposed to do about that? In other words, you don't say, oh, you've got to look like this, you've got to act like that, you've got to sing these songs, you've got to say these prayers or whatever, just to see what happens. So when a people group who have not encountered Christ before lay hold of Christ through the Holy Ghost, what happens? What just happens? I don't think I've seen that in Aotearoa, New Zealand, actually, among Māori. What I've seen is really a kind of response which you kind of get where your Christianity or your Christian expression is based on what the people who have brought it to you, for better or for worse. Now, I don't know whether it's possible to have that kind of, how shall I say, recalibrated spirit birth as though it afresh. I don't know whether it is. However, I'm still really, really interested in just allowing Christ the Redeemer, Christ the Messiah of Māori and the Holy Ghost then to work among them and for them to be free then to express their worship, express their love in their way without actually telling them, oh, you have to do it this way. That's really, really important. And I think that anyone who sort of looked into missions now, you know, if we talk about reaching an unreached people group, that would be the modern mission approach, would not come in with, say, a Western set of to-dos and do-nots and then lay that on people, but simply give the gospel, give them the tools, and then if they want to find out stuff, say, oh, how about this, how about that, but do it in a very respectful way, allowing them to grow. It is just in the same way in the very first beginning. Those Jews, you know, had to just struggle with all of this stuff. It was very strange. And then the Greeks had to struggle with it, and the Romans had to struggle with it, and everyone had to struggle with it. And it's okay. God's not fazed by struggle and working it out. So I'm not sure to what extent the church has a role in the political processes. That's an interesting question. I think there's obviously a really, really important missiological thing in terms of not just Māori, you know, as like a mission field, was the whole of New Zealand as a mission field. So I don't see it that way. However, I think personally what I see really exciting is the extent to which Māori Christians, how they then would engage in this exercise of reaching our fellow citizens for Christ. And I mean, we can see already some of the things that are really, really important. You know, in Māoridom, the idea of tikanga of araha, you know, the whole thing of hospitality, of guardianship and stewardship and all things are all cardinal values within Māoridom. How then they can be expressed through the Christian mouthpiece or the Christian lens or something. A lot of those things are actually Christ-like anyway. I think we are on the cusp of a really exciting part of the history of our country. I really do. That's why I said before, we've only just begun. So what we've got now is it's not an entirely clear playing field because we've still got stuff there. However, the horizons before us, though, are uncluttered, or they should be. So therefore, we have this extraordinary opportunity, and I think in our country we are freer to do this than any other country on earth. I really do. There's this, I think I read somewhere that as a people group, the Māori are the most recent of all people groups on earth. They're the most recent, which is an interesting thought. And so there is this sense then that there's something, as well as, of course, the history of Māori, but there's something, though, about the freshness of Māori in that sense, being a distinct people group, which, like if we discover anything, really, we say, well, it's a treasure. We need to be thinking very carefully about being very respectful and being very intrigued and very, very curious about it as well. So I think that particularly among the generation of my children who are millennials, they see a different future than I did at their age, for sure. I was saying to my wife, or we've actually shared this together, it's as though our lives have kind of run parallel courses. There's a Pākehā life and then there's a Māori life, running in parallel with ours, but with very little interchange or intersection with that. Occasionally there would be some kind of event which might have some nominal influence or some encounter with our world, but that would be occasional. It was certainly not part of the normal fabric of our lives by any means. And we're sad about that. For my generation and older group of people, I think we need to relax, not be defensive, not become culturally retrenched or anything like that. We know, for example, that one of the big days in New Zealand is Anzac Day. Okay? It's almost become our de facto holy day, actually. And it's because there are ideas of sacrifice, there's ideas of, colonials, doing the work for Imperial England and getting killed in their thousands and so forth. I would hope that Waitangi Day, will eclipse that. So we won't be honouring our deed in that sense, that something about our national identity, about our DNA or something will be forged differently. What we all have to come to terms with is that, we can't hold on to the past, whatever it is, because we're people of the present and the future. But we can decide how we're going to respond to those things, how we're going to view the future which is ahead of us. And as I say, if we can do that with a sense of rejoicing, a sense of deep respect, a sense of delight basically in the beautiful culture of the Māori people and their language and the poetry and all their myths and all those things, and their way of life, then we can be immeasurably enriched in that process. We will certainly not be impoverished.
Kia ora koutou katoa. It is Adam Dodds here, Senior Pastor of the Elim Church. Great to be with you. You've just heard a number of different perspectives on the Treaty of Waitangi. And Christians have different perspectives on many important subjects, including this one. And it's important that we maintain our love and our unity for one another within this diversity of perspectives. At Elim, our elders have been undertaking a bicultural journey for some time. And one conviction that we have as church elders is that our job is not to make political statements, but our job is to understand the nature of the treaty as a spiritual covenant and to honour it as such. For those who are able to come to our services in person, at physical services on February the 14th, we're going to have Dr. Alistair Rees, who's a part of Kerry Baptist College from the North Island, coming down to speak to us specifically on the nature of the treaty as a spiritual covenant. It's going to be fantastic. I encourage you to make it to church on that day if you are able to. But may the Holy Spirit continue to lead all of us personally and corporately in how to best honour the treaty as part of our following of Jesus. Amen.